June 26, 1938, Oberndorf am Neckar, Germany. The smell of machine oil fills the vaulted halls of the Walther factory. At a long test bench, a gray-haired inspector named Erich Bauer places a new semi-automatic pistol on a velvet pad. Its shape is modern, almost alien compared to the classic Luger P08 that officers still wear on their parade belts. "Gentlemen," he says to a group of visiting army officers in polished boots, "this is the future sidearm of the Wehrmacht, the pistol 38. The officers exchange glances, and then laughter. Kurt Schneider snorts, lifting the pistol by its alloy frame. "It feels like a toy. Stamped parts? A hollow slide? My Luger is solid steel. This looks like it was made in a kitchen." The engineers at Karl Walther GmbH stare back in silence. They know the ridicule well. For years, every innovation, from double-action triggers to simplified machining, has been mocked by men raised in the imperial tradition of the P08 Luger, the sacred pistol of the Kaiser's army.
But outside those factory walls, the new Germany of 1938 is preparing for war. The Wehrmacht needs hundreds of thousands of pistols, not thousands. The Luger, elegant and precise, costs twice as much and takes nearly 10 times longer to manufacture. Its toggle lock mechanism demands obsessive machining and polishing, work that clogs production lines. The Walther P38, by contrast, uses stamped parts, a locked breech recoil system, and a simple decocker safety. It can be produced in minutes, repaired in the field, and, as engineer Fritz Walther insists, will fire when a Luger jams. Still, the old guard remains unconvinced. The Luger, they say, won the Great War. The P38, in their eyes, is an accountant's weapon, not an officer's. By late 1939, when the Wehrmacht marches into Poland, only small numbers of P38s exist. Most officers still carry the Luger P08, polished to a mirror finish, its distinctive toggle clicking like clockwork at the firing range. None of them realize that within 2 years, the German front will freeze solid and their beautiful Lugers will become useless chunks of steel.
September 12, 1939, near Lodz, Poland. The air smells of smoke and damp wheat. A column of German infantry from the 10th Army pushes through a shattered village, walls riddled with bullet holes, carts overturned, horses frozen mid-step in death. In the lead half-track rides Lieutenant Hans Meyer, aged 26, commander of a reconnaissance platoon. At his hip, a brand-new Walther P38, issued not from prestige but shortage. He misses his Luger already. The old pistol, with its toggle action and slender balance, had felt like an extension of his hand. The P38, with its boxy slide and matte finish, feels soulless, mechanical. Still, orders are orders. The ambush comes without warning. From behind a barn, Polish troops open fire with machine guns. Rounds tear through the column. A truck erupts in flame. Meyer dives into a ditch, his rifle lost in the scramble. As footsteps rush closer, 1, 2, 3 Polish infantrymen, he pulls the P38 from his holster and fires. Click. Then a roar. The first man falls. The second stumbles, screaming. The third stops in shock, staring at Meyer as if he's seen a ghost. Meyer doesn't remember pulling the trigger twice more, only that the pistol never jammed, never hesitated, even as mud spattered its frame and rain fell in sheets. Later that night, under flickering lantern light, he strips the P38 on the hood of a truck. The slide pops free with a simple press of a button. No tools, no fiddling with the delicate toggle of a Luger. He realizes it can be cleaned, reassembled, and ready again in minutes. "Strange weapon," mutters his sergeant. "Feels ugly, but works like a dog." Meyer just nods. The P38 may be ugly, but it saved his life.
Winter, 1939. Wehrmacht Evaluation Reports, Berlin. At the Heereswaffenamt, Army Ordnance Office. Test officers review combat feedback from Poland. A clerk reads aloud. Field reliability excellent. Mud, dust, no stoppages reported. Accuracy consistent to 50 meters. Soldiers remark, double action trigger useful in panic situations. Another report adds, quietly, some officers object to appearance. Consider issue to NCOs and line troops instead of officers. The old prejudice dies slowly. For now, the P-38 remains a symbol of the new army. Practical, efficient, built for the realities of mechanized war rather than parade glory. In factories across Germany, production ramps up. Walther and Zella-Mehlis cannot keep pace. Contracts go to Mauser and Spreework. Each plant stamps its own code on the slide, a small lettered mark that will later help historians trace the weapon's path through the war. By 1940, more than tens of thousands of P-38s are in circulation. The Luger, though still beloved, becomes harder to find at the front. Its precision machining strains under wartime pressure. For the first time, the unthinkable happens. Officers begin to trade their Lugers for P-38s. May 1940, near Sedan, France. A panzer officer named Hauptmann Karl Drexler writes home. They laughed when I turned in my Luger for a P-28. They aren't laughing now. The new pistol fires after being dropped in the mud, frozen in rain, or slammed against a hatch. I could not say the same of the old gun. By the end of the French campaign, the Walther P38 has proven its worth. But its true trial, the one that will silence all doubters, is still to come. Because 2 years later, in the winter of 1941, the same officers who mocked it will be standing in snow up to their knees, their Lugers frozen solid, pulling triggers that refuse to move, while the P-38s beside them keep firing.
December 3, 1941, outskirts of Klin, 85 kilometers northwest of Moscow. Snowflakes whip sideways in a cutting wind. The temperature hovers near minus 35 degrees Celsius, cold enough to freeze breath before it hits the ground. In a shattered farmhouse, a group of German officers from the 6th Panzer Division huddle around a guttering lantern. Their greatcoats are stiff with ice, their fingers wrapped in rags. Major Otto Brandt, once a proud Luger owner, struggles to disassemble his pistol beside a dying fire. He removes the toggle, but the mechanism refuses to move. Condensed moisture from his last patrol has frozen the gun solid. "It's useless," he mutters, his breath white in the air. "Completely useless." Across from him, Lieutenant Hans Meyer, the same man who once mocked the P-38 in 1938, sits cleaning his sidearm. The weapon glints dull silver in the firelight. It's his Walther P38, scuffed and dirty, yet still operational. He works calmly, ejecting the magazine, wiping frost from the barrel. "Try this instead, Herr Meyer," he says quietly, handing over the pistol. It doesn't freeze. Brandt takes it skeptically, squeezes the trigger, click, click, bang. 3 perfect rounds into the frozen wall. He stares at the gun for a long moment, then laughs. A dry, almost bitter sound. "So, this is the cheap toy, is it?" Outside, the war has ground to a halt. Engines refuse to start. Grease thickens like tar. Even the feared MG-34 machine guns jam without constant heat. But the Walther P38 keeps firing. Its design, open slide, short recoil action, double action trigger, means it sheds ice more easily than the Luger's delicate toggle system. The P38's firing pin is heavy, its tolerances generous, built for dirt, grit, and mud, not parade grounds. The difference becomes obvious to everyone. When Soviet infantry launch a night assault near Klin, Brandt's unit is caught in chaos.
Flare light turns the snowfield into an eerie daylight. Luger owners struggle, pounding their frozen pistols against helmets to loosen slides. Meanwhile, men armed with P38s fire steadily, methodically. Bang! 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 Through the blizzard. Sergeant Heinz Kreimer, later captured and interrogated by Soviet troops, recalled, "We stopped laughing at the P38 that night. The Luger was a luxury. The Walther was a tool, and tools save lives." Back in Germany, the reports begin to flow. At the Heereswaffenamt, engineers compile feedback from the Eastern Front. Field officers praise the pistol's reliability in freezing weather and filth. Some even describe it as a soldier's pistol, not an officer's ornament. The irony isn't lost on the designers. Fritz Walther, working at his desk in Zella-Mehlis, reads a field report from Army Group Center and underlines a single line in pencil. Where the Luger froze, the P38 fired. By spring 1942, the shift is complete. The P38, once mocked as the poor man's Luger, becomes the standard sidearm of the Wehrmacht. Factories at Walther, Mauser, and Spreewerk churn out tens of thousands per month. The pistol appears in every theater, from the deserts of North Africa to the forests of Russia. Even SS officers, notorious for their vanity and preference for the elegant Luger, begin carrying P38s. The shift isn't just practical, it's symbolic. The German army has learned a hard truth. In modern war, beauty dies first. The P38 will go on firing long after the right collapses. But for now, in the frozen ruins outside Moscow, it's simply a lifeline. A cold piece of stamped steel that refuses to quit when everything else breaks.
Spring 1942, Vyazma Sector, Western Front. Mud. Endless, soul-swallowing mud. As the snows melt, the Russian steppe turns into an ocean of filth that swallows boots, trucks, and horses alike. Corporal Ernst Vogel, a veteran of Poland and France, trudges through knee-deep sludge with his rifle slung over one shoulder. At his belt hangs a weapon that once drew sneers, the Walther P38. He carries it not for pride, but because he trusts it. He's seen too much to care about prestige. A kilometer behind the line, Vogel's platoon rests inside what used to be a kolkhoz barn. A group of replacements, fresh-faced, their uniforms still stiff, gather around a fire. One of them, a young recruit from Munich, polishes a pristine Luger P08, its metal gleaming even in the dim light. "They gave me this from my uncle's collection," he boasts. "Said it's the best pistol ever made." Vogel chuckles, takes the P38 from his holster, and drops it in the mud at his feet. He picks it back up, flicks the safety off, and fires into the wall. Bang! No jam, no hesitation. The recruits stare. "Keep your uncle's heirloom," Vogel says quietly. "This one survives the war." By mid-1942, the P38 is no longer a novelty. It's the backbone of the German officer corps, issued to tank crews, artillerymen, and paratroopers alike. The design's practicality becomes legendary. Open-top slide, preventing stovepipes. A reliable double-action trigger, revolutionary for its time. A simple takedown lever for field stripping in seconds. In contrast, the Luger, with its tight tolerances, fails in dirt and cold, conditions the Eastern Front provides in abundance. War has no patience for elegance. Summer 1942, Kharkov. Lieutenant Karl Drexler, now commanding a mechanized platoon, writes in his diary, "We once worshipped the Luger as an officer's symbol. like a saber in the old wars. Now, symbols mean nothing.
The P38 may look crude, but it fires every time. When the tank catches fire, when the rifle jams, when the Soviets rush from the smoke, you draw, and it works. For many soldiers, the P38 becomes something more than a weapon. It's a constant, a piece of machinery that never lies. In a world where maps are wrong, radios fail, and supply lines vanish, the P38 always delivers what it promises: a single, dependable shot. Meanwhile, in Berlin, propaganda officers take notice. Official photographs begin showing soldiers and officers armed with the Walther, no longer the Luger. Field Marshal Keitel himself issues orders emphasizing uniform armament for morale and logistics. Behind the polished words lies a simple truth: Germany is losing the luxury of choice. The war machine demands efficiency, not pride. On the Eastern Front, this efficiency means survival. The P-38's rugged design, using fewer machined parts and more stamped steel, makes it faster to produce and easier to replace. A single factory worker can finish 10 P-38s in the time it takes to build one Luger. By late 1942, the Luger line at Mauser is effectively phased out. The officers who once scorned the P-38 now compete to obtain one. Letters sent home are filled with quiet admissions of irony. "The toy has become the tool," writes one captain. "The pistol we mocked is the only thing that still works." As the Wehrmacht advances towards Stalingrad, the pistol's legend grows in the trenches, in bunkers, in burned-out villages where rifles jam and machine guns freeze. In the close-quarters hell of ruined factories and collapsing stairwells, the P-38 is there, firing when it shouldn't, functioning in conditions that no mechanical engineer had ever designed for. It's not beautiful, it's not sacred, but it's alive, and that, in 1942, is worth more than any symbol carved from the old empire's pride.
November 22, 1942, Tractor Factory District, Stalingrad. The snow is black with soot. The air tastes of iron and ash. Every sound, the rattle of a loose casing, the groan of twisted steel, echoes through the ruins like the voice of the dead. Sergeant Ernst Vogel grips his Walther P38 in both hands, his knuckles white beneath torn gloves. The pistol is warm from firing. He's been fighting room to room for 8 straight hours, and he's still alive only because the P38 keeps firing when everything else has stopped working. Across the street, Soviet infantry swarm from a wrecked warehouse. It's close, too close. Vogel fires twice. The first round misses. The second finds its mark. A T-34 burns at the intersection, its turret half melted into the asphalt. The wind carries the screams of men trapped inside, voices that sound almost inhuman. Inside the ruins of Stalingrad, the P-38 becomes the soldier's lifeline. Submachine guns run dry, rifles are too long to maneuver in stairwells and basements. Every fight is within arm's reach, knife, shovel, pistol range. Reports from the 6th Army describe entire platoons reduced to a handful of men fighting with pistols and grenades. The Walther's double-action feature, mocked before the war, proves crucial here. A soldier can draw and fire instantly, without cocking the hammer. In the dark, in panic, that half-second saves lives. December 2nd, 1942, beneath the Red October factory. The tunnels stink of oil and blood. Lieutenant Hans Meyer, now gaunt and frostbitten, leads a dozen survivors through collapsed corridors. Their Mausers are empty, their MGs are silent, their barrels burst from overuse. Only his P-38 remains. He crouches behind a steel column, his breath clouding the darkness. Footsteps approach. Soviet scouts, voices low. He waits until he can smell the tobacco on their breath before he fires. 2 shots, then another. Each one hits. Each one counts. When the echoes fade, the silence returns. That horrible Stalingrad silence, filled with the crackle of distant fire and the creak of falling masonry.
He wipes the pistol's slide with a torn sleeve. The action moves smoothly, cleanly. Even here, amid dust, frost, and blood, it performs like clockwork. By now, across the frozen city, the legend has spread. The Luger jams in the cold. The Walther fires in hell. Soldiers begin trading Lugers for P38s, not for prestige, but for survival. One corporal reportedly offered his entire pay for a single Walther. Others scavenged them from fallen comrades. Captured Soviet soldiers often mistook it for a new machine pistol because of its rapid, deliberate rhythm in close quarters. Thud, 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 precise and mechanical. January 1943, within the collapsing German pocket. Food is gone. Ammunition is running out. But the P38s still fire. Officers keep them not as symbols of authority, but as the final weapon. The one that would decide whether they surrendered or died by their own hand. A captured diary from Captain Wilhelm Krauss, discovered after the surrender, reads, "The Luger was for parades. The Walther is for the end. I clean it every night, not because I expect to survive, but because I owe it that much. It has never failed me. I won't let it fail now." When the Sixth Army finally collapses in February 1943, Soviet troops collect thousands of pistols from the ruins. Most of the Lugers are frozen solid, their toggles rusted shut. The P38s, dirt-caked, scorched, some missing grips, still function. A Soviet ordnance officer writes in his report, "The German pistol marked P38 is of inferior appearance, but exceptional reliability. It operates even when dirty, cold, or damaged. Recommend study for Soviet design reference." Even the enemy recognizes it. The pistol Germany mocked has become the standard of mechanical survival. In Stalingrad's ruins, where machines and men froze side by side, the P38 earned something no parade ever could: respect born from necessity. It didn't shine. It didn't impress. It just worked. And that was enough to become immortal.
April 1943. German Army Headquarters, Smolensk. A courier plane touches down on a dirt airstrip. Inside its cargo compartment, stacked neatly in straw crates marked with a single code, AC43. Each crate contains 20 pistols, Walther P38s, fresh from the Mauser factory in Oberndorf. When the armorers pry open the first box, the smell of Cosmoline fills the air, the sweet chemical scent of preservation and war. Colonel Heinrich Bauer, reviewing the shipment list, frowns. "The Mauser factory is making Walthers now?" The quartermaster nods. "Walther, Mauser, Spraywork, all of them. The Fuhrer wants 1 million by next year." The colonel grunts, examining the dull gray finish. The wartime pistols are rougher now. No polish, no luxury grips, no bluing deep as ink like before. But that doesn't matter. These guns aren't meant for show. They're meant for survival. By 1943, the P38 is everywhere. From the frozen forests of Russia to the deserts of Africa, from the streets of Paris to the ruins of Kharkov. The pistol, once a symbol of compromise, becomes the backbone of the Wehrmacht sidearm arsenal. Each factory leaves its mark. AC for Walther and Zella-Mehlis, BYF for Mauser and Oberndorf, CYQ for Spraywork and Grotau. To collectors decades later, those letters will tell stories. But in 1943, they tell soldiers something else entirely. This weapon was built for war, not ceremony. May 1943, Tunisia. In the ruins of a bombed-out French villa, Afrika Korps soldiers retreat under British shelling. Sergeant Kurt Weber, his Panzer IV destroyed and his uniform soaked in oil, crawls into cover. His rifle is gone. His hands tremble as he reaches for the P38 on his belt, the same model issued to every tank crewman. British infantry close in. Weber fires through a broken window, once, twice, again.
The weapon spits flame, cycling perfectly despite the sand and grit that would choke a Luger in minutes. When the magazine runs dry, he reloads with a single practiced motion. Captured later that day, Weber refuses to discard it. When a British officer asks why he risked his life for a sidearm, he answered simply, "It's the only thing that never betrayed me." Across the front lines, Allied soldiers begin to take notice.
In Italy, American GIs find P-38s on captured Germans and are struck by their simplicity. Private Robert Hayes, 34th Infantry Division, writes home in late 1943. They carry this new pistol called the P-38. Looks ugly, but shoots straight as a rifle. Every time we grab one, it still works. Every time. British ordnance analysts test captured models at Enfield. Their report reads, "Excellent mechanical reliability, simplified for mass production. Double-action trigger notable for military application. Design efficiency superior to the Luger in adverse conditions." In a quiet twist of irony, the same industrial pragmatism that German officers once derided now earns the admiration of their enemies. Inside Germany, the Walther engineers continued to refine the design. The HP model, a pre-war civilian version, becomes a luxury item traded on the black market by officers wanting early production quality. But on the front, soldiers prize the later variants, the rough, wartime P-38s, whose tool marks still show, whose finish is thin but durable. Each one is a testament to necessity and to German engineering, stripped of vanity. December 1943, Eastern Front near Kiev. Night falls like ink. A German platoon digs in against a Soviet counterattack. Machine guns jam in the cold. Communication lines go dead. When the Soviets close into within 20 meters, pistols become the last defense. A storm of snow and fire engulfs the trenches. Men shout, curse, pray. In the chaos, the dull bark of P-38s cuts through the noise. The same mechanical rhythm heard from Stalingrad to Sicily. Thud, thud, thud. A sound that now means one thing. The line still holds. By 1944, the Walther P38 has transcended its role as a mere firearm. It's become an icon of German endurance, practical, adaptable, unyielding. It's the pistol for a war that no longer pretends to be glorious. A weapon for men fighting not for empire, but for survival. In the coming year, that survival instinct will be all that's left. Because as the Allies landed Normandy and the Red Army surges west, the P-38 will serve its last grim purpose: to arm a collapsing army and to outlive the world that created it.
June 7, 1944, Normandy, France. Rain falls in steady sheets over the Bocage countryside. The air smells of cordite and churned earth. Somewhere beyond the hedgerows, American paratroopers are advancing. The Wehrmacht line is fracturing. In a foxhole outside Canton, Sergeant Kurt Weber, the same tanker who once fought in North Africa, now grips his Walther P38 with shaking, mud-streaked hands. The sound of artillery rolls like thunder across the fields. He presses the pistol to his chest, feeling the cold steel against his heart, as if drawing strength from it. "Keep it close," his captain whispers beside him. "It's the only thing that still works when nothing else does." As dawn breaks, the battle begins. The panzers are gone, the Luftwaffe is gone, but the soldiers remain, scattered, frightened, holding the same sidearms that once symbolized Germany's industrial pride. For many, the P-38 has become the final weapon of retreat. When rifles jam in the mud or are abandoned during withdrawals, the pistol remains, tucked into belts, holsters, even inside boots. It's the last line between life and capture. June 9th, 1944, sound low. A group of Fallschirmjäger, German paratroopers, take cover in the ruins of a farmhouse. Their commanding officer, Oberleutnant Reinhard Voss, kneels beside a wounded soldier, pressing a hand against the man's chest. "He's gone," says a medic quietly.
Voss nods, removes the dead man's Luger from its holster, and tosses it aside. Then he pulls a P38 from his own belt and sets it down on the table. "Replace it," he says flatly. "That one still fires in the rain." He's right. Outside, in the downpour, the Walther's open top slide and phosphate finish resist the elements better than any weapon in the German arsenal. In the mud and filth of Normandy, it outlives everything else, including soon the men who carry it. By mid-1944, the Walther P38 is in the hands of nearly every German fighting force: Wehrmacht, SS, Luftwaffe, Volkssturm. The pistol's double-action trigger and mechanical simplicity make it easy to teach, even to conscripts with minimal training.
Factories running at full capacity in Walther, Mauser, and Spreework are now producing over 30,000 pistols per month, a staggering figure for a nation being bombed daily. Many are assembled by forced laborers under the roar of Allied bombers overhead. The rougher wartime finish becomes a badge of desperation, unpolished, unblued, sometimes uneven, but still deadly. Every weapon that leaves the factory bears silent witness to a dying empire. August 1944, Falaise Pocket. A German convoy lies shattered on a dirt road. Tanks burn, horses collapse. Smoke curls upward into a sky filled with Allied aircraft. Among the wreckage, Private Rolf Hagen crawls from under an overturned truck. Blood runs down his face. His rifle is gone. He draws his P38, hands trembling, aiming at shapes moving through the smoke. A Canadian patrol appears, cautious, weapons ready. Rolf hesitates. Then, with shaking hands, he sets the pistol down and raises his arms. The Canadian officer picks it up, examining it. "What is this? A new kind of Luger?" "No," Rolf says quietly. "Better." By the end of 1944, even Allied troops have begun collecting the Walther P38 as a trophy of survival. In contrast to the ornate Luger, prized for its aesthetic, the P38 carries a reputation for sheer endurance. GI reports describe it as the most practical enemy sidearm of the war. Many captured examples are shipped to ordnance depots in Britain and the United States, tested, cataloged, and eventually adopted as post-war police and military weapons. The irony is complete. A pistol born from Nazi pragmatism becomes a model for Allied sidearms in the years to come. December 1944, Ardennes Offensive, Belgium. The last German counterattack of the war begins under heavy snow. Veterans who fought in Russia instantly recognize the omen, the return of the same frozen hell that once devoured them. In the forest near Bastogne, Lieutenant Hans Meyer, now a shadow of the young officer who mocked the P38 back in 1938, crouches behind a shattered truck. The pistol is in his gloved hand, scarred and battered, but still functioning. He has carried it through Poland, Moscow, Kharkiv, and now Belgium. It's all he has left. Bullets whistle overhead. He squeezes the trigger. Bang! A flash, a recoil, the familiar rhythm. He exhales slowly. "Old friend, don't fail me now." The Walther doesn't. It fires through snow, mud, and the collapse of an empire. By 1945, it has become more than a weapon. It is a symbol of endurance in the face of ruin, a reminder that even in the machinery of destruction, some things were built to last.
April 28, 1945, Berlin, Reich Chancellery Bunker. The city above is dying. The air trembles with the thunder of artillery, Soviet shells slamming into the capital every 30 seconds. Dust falls like snow from the ceiling of the Führer bunker. Each impact sounds closer than the last.
In a dim corridor, Major Hans Meyer kneels beside a table strewn with ammunition and field maps. The man who once laughed at the P38 now holds it as if it were part of his body. The blued steel has turned a dull gray from wear. The grips are cracked, darkened with sweat and oil. He wipes the slide one last time, checks the chamber, and looks toward the doorway where a young soldier waits for orders. "You're too young for this," Meyer mutters. "Go. Try to reach the Tiergarten. There's a path still open." The boy hesitates. "And you, Herr Major?" Meyer smiles, tired, faint, but real. "I'll stay. Someone has to hold the line, at least until the end." He cocks the hammer, the metal clicking loud beneath the muffled thunder of war. Outside, Berlin burns. Soviet tanks advance street by street. Flames climb from shattered buildings, painting the sky blood red. Every intersection is a fortress, every basement a tomb. The once proud Wehrmacht is reduced to fragments. Boys from the Hitlerjugend, old men from the Volkssturm, wounded veterans who refuse to surrender. Most carry rifles scavenged from the dead. Some only pistols. And among those pistols, one name dominates: Walther P38. April 29th, near the Brandenburg Gate. A squad of SS men, trapped between Soviet armor and collapsing buildings, retreat into the subway tunnels. Their leader, Sturmbannführer Otto Brandt, the same officer who once cursed his frozen Luger outside Moscow, now fires a battered P-38 down the tunnel as Soviet troops approach. The echoes multiply, turning every shot into a roar. He reloads, one of his last magazines. The pistol cycles perfectly, even after years of war. It never jammed, never hesitated. "The last tool that works," he says quietly, more to himself than to his men.
April 30th, early morning, inside the Führer bunker. A silence heavier than any bombardment settles underground. In one of the smaller rooms, a single Walther P38 lies on a desk beside a cyanide capsule and a folded map of Germany. The pistol gleams faintly under a single flickering bulb. No one knows who left it there, but within hours, the sound of a single gunshot will mark the symbolic end of the 1,000-year Reich. Not from a Luger, the icon of old Germany, but from a Walther. May 1st, Tiergarten Park. Major Hans Meyer and a handful of survivors make their last stand in the shadow of the burned-out Reichstag. They fire until their barrels glow, until their last cartridges are spent. When the Soviets finally surround them, the air smells of wet earth and blood. Meyer lowers his P-38, its slide locked back. He stares at it for a long time, the weapon that followed him through 6 years, 4 campaigns, and 1,000 miles of retreat. "You never failed me," he whispers. He removes the magazine, sets the pistol carefully on the ground, and raises his hands. A Soviet lieutenant approaches, kicking the pistol aside. He glances at it curiously, muttering in broken German, "Luger!" Meyer shakes his head. "No, better." By the time the guns fall silent, the Walther P38 has outlived the Reich itself. From Poland to France, from Moscow to Berlin, it has served in every campaign, survived every climate, and proven itself beyond every doubt. Its reputation is no longer that of the cheap replacement. It's the weapon that endured when Germany didn't. In the ruins of Berlin, German soldiers collect thousands of them from fallen officers. Most still function perfectly. Some are kept as trophies. Others are given to the new East German police. The irony lost on no one. May 8th, 1945. The war's end. Across the bombed-out landscape of Europe, surrendering German troops lay down their arms. Among them, the P-38s. Lined in rows, glinting under gray skies.
a symbol of a war that devoured everything except the machinery built to fight it. The Lugers will end up in museums, polished and admired. The P38s will keep working, quietly, efficiently, in police holsters, border guard posts, and later even in the hands of NATO soldiers during the Cold War. Because some designs don't die with empires, they simply keep firing.
May 12, 1945. Zella-Mehlis, Thuringia, Germany. The war is over, but the air still smells of smoke and oil. The Walther factory, once humming with machinery and the rhythmic clatter of pistons and presses, now lies silent under the boots of American soldiers. Empty shell casings litter the floor like autumn leaves. Blueprints flutter on the drafting tables. Precise, beautiful drawings of the P38, each line a reminder of a vanished empire's industrial genius. An American ordnance officer, Captain Robert Fields, walks through the ruins with his notebook open. He bends down, picks up a half-assembled pistol, still slick with factory oil. Incredible. Still works. He points the weapon at the cracked concrete wall and pulls the trigger. Bang! The sound echoes through the empty hall. The war had ended, but the P38 had not. Within weeks, the Allies begin cataloging every weapon they find in Germany. Lugers are prized by soldiers as souvenirs, trophies of the defeated Wehrmacht. But the P38 captured something different: respect. In Allied reports, it's described not as an artifact of prestige, but as a machine perfected by necessity. Simple, durable, reliable, reads one British analysis. A combat pistol without pretense and without equal. Thousands are shipped to ordnance depots in Britain, France, and the United States for evaluation. In Springfield, Massachusetts, engineers at the U.S. Army Armory disassemble and test hundreds of captured P38s. They note its double-action mechanism, its ease of manufacture, and its performance after exposure to mud, salt water, and cold. One entry written in the margin of a report says simply, "A soldier's pistol." 1955. Bonn, West Germany. 10 years after defeat, a new army is born, the Bundeswehr, and with it, a new demand for sidearms. The German government turns once again to Walther. The old P38 design, unchanged in essence, becomes the official service pistol of West Germany's armed forces, now under NATO, not the Reich. Its shape, its sound, its balance, the same that had once echoed across the ruins of Stalingrad, now returns, holstered on the hips of soldiers sworn to democracy. History, in its cold symmetry, smiles. The pistol that served Hitler's armies now defends the free world. Meanwhile, in the East, across the Iron Curtain in Soviet-controlled Germany, the Spreewerk factory continues to produce P38 variants under new management. The pistols, stamped with different marks, arm police and border guards of the German Democratic Republic. The same weapon now exists on both sides of the Cold War, a divided gun for a divided nation. One symbol, two ideologies. The P38's influence spreads beyond Germany. Italy, France, and Norway adopt captured models for their post-war police forces. In Norway, it remains in service until the 1980s. In Portugal and Finland, copies are produced under license. In the United States, returning soldiers keep their captured P38s locked in drawers and trunks, reminders of a war they survived. To them, it isn't just a weapon, it's a memory of the end. 1963. Ulm, West Germany. Inside the modernized Walther factory, machines hum again. A new generation of engineers work beneath fluorescent lights. Among them is Fritz Walther's son, Karl Heinz, overseeing production of a new variant, the P1, the aluminum-framed successor to the wartime P38. It's lighter, more refined, but unmistakably the same gun. Stamped into its frame are the words, "Made in West Germany."
To those who remember the old markings P38, AC43, BYF44, it's almost poetic. The tool of a fallen empire now bears the mark of rebirth. Across Europe, soldiers trained with the P1 through the height of the Cold War. In the forests of Bavaria, NATO exercises echo with the same sound heard once in Moscow snow. Bang. Click. Bang. Smooth, consistent, reliable. Still working after 30 decades of history's heaviest burdens. The Walther P38 didn't just survive the war, it transcended it. It became a weapon without a master, serving kings, fascists, Democrats, and peacekeepers alike. Late 1970s, Bonn, Federal Republic of Germany. An old man walks through a defense exhibition. His name is Hans Meyer, retired now, his one straight back slightly bent. He stops at a display case. Inside sits a pristine post-war P1, sleek, anodized, perfect. Next to it, under glass, lies an original wartime P38, its finish worn and grips scarred. He stares for a long moment, then, with a faint smile, he says softly in German, "You have seen more history than I ever will." The museum lights glint off the pistol's metal, catching on a faint scratch across the slide, a mark that might have once been made by frozen snow outside Moscow. The P38 had outlived its soldiers, its factories, and its flag, but it had kept its soul. Cold steel, perfect function, and the quiet promise of survival.
January 1979, Gardone Val Trompia, northern Italy. In a small design office at Fabbrica d'Armi Pietro Beretta, engineers gather around a disassembled Walther P38. Blueprints are spread across the table, half German, half Italian. The smell of oil and aluminum shavings fills the air. Chief designer Carlo Beretta taps his pencil on the P38's open slide. "This," he says, "is genius. Simple, balanced, why change it?" Another engineer, young and ambitious, grins. "We'll improve it, but its heart stays German." He sketches a new outline on tracing paper. A pistol with a more ergonomic grip, a larger trigger guard, a higher magazine capacity. Across the top, he writes a name that will one day become legendary: Beretta 92. The P38's design DNA is everywhere. Its open-top slide, first dismissed by traditionalists, becomes the foundation for Beretta's line of pistols, a feature that ensures flawless ejection and minimal jamming. Its locking block mechanism, designed by Fritz Walther in 1938 to reduce recoil and increase accuracy, becomes the standard for future generations of service pistols. Even its double-action, single-action trigger, revolutionary at the time, becomes the new doctrine for law enforcement and military sidearms across the world. Where the Luger had been art, the P38 was engineering, and that engineering shaped everything that followed. 1985, Washington, D.C., Pentagon. The United States military announces the results of its long-awaited XM9 pistol trials. After testing more than a dozen models, the chosen replacement for the venerable Colt M1911 is revealed, the Beretta 92F. A pistol born from Italian innovation and German heritage. The open slide, the locking block, the trigger system, all traceable to the Walther P38. It's a quiet, unspoken lineage, the weapon of America's next generation of soldiers descending from the tool of their father's enemies. War has a strange sense of irony. Meanwhile, in West Germany, the Walther Company continues evolving. The P38 transitions into the P1, and later into the P4, lighter, refined, modernized. But every new model still carries the same unmistakable silhouette. Gun designers across Europe, Sig Sauer, Heckler & Koch, CZ, study its balance, its trigger geometry, its mechanical efficiency. Every modern double-action pistol owes something to the P38's blueprint.
Even in the United States, commercial gunsmiths studied captured wartime Walthers, marveling at their tolerances and metallurgy. A weapon once born in the service of tyranny now defines the global standard of sidearm reliability.
1991, Desert Storm, Kuwait. In the hands of U.S. Marines, Beretta M9 pistols, direct descendants of the P38, flash under the desert sun. The same open-top slide, the same locking block mechanism. Only the names have changed. A half-century after the Eastern Front froze under steel and snow, the ghost of the P38 fires again, this time under the banner of the free world. Across the decades, its influence spreads far beyond the battlefield. Police forces from Tokyo to Oslo, military units from Rome to Buenos Aires, all train with weapons derived from Walther's 1938 creation. It's a quiet revolution in design philosophy. Practical over elegant, reliable over ornate. A soldier's weapon, not an officer's ornament. Exactly as the Eastern Front had demanded. 2010, Ulm, Germany. Inside the Walther Museum, an aging engineer named Karl-Heinz Walther stands before a display of pistols spanning 70 years. At the far left, under soft white light, lies a first-run 1939 Walther P38, blued steel, wooden grips, marked AC-40. Next to it, the Beretta 92, SIG P226, Walther P99, all descendants, all carrying the same mechanical soul. He touches the glass and murmurs, "You survived us all." In the background, a recording plays faintly, the echo of a test range, each shot a heartbeat of history. Bang, click, bang. The same rhythm that once echoed through Moscow, Normandy, and Berlin. In the end, the Walther P38 was never meant to be iconic. It wasn't built to be admired. It was built to endure, and it did. From the mud of the Eastern Front to the deserts of Iraq, its principles shaped every major sidearm for nearly a century. It was a weapon forged from necessity, not ideology. And that, perhaps, is why it lasted longer than the empire that made it. Longer than the generals, the banners, and the lies. Because truth in engineering as in war is found not in beauty, but in survival.
April 20th, 2023, Berlin, Germany. In a quiet exhibition hall of the German Historical Museum, a small glass case sits in a dim corner away from the main displays of tanks and uniforms. Inside, resting on black velvet, lies a Walther P38, serial number AC-42. Its blued finish is faded, its edges worn smooth by countless hands. A small plaque beneath it reads, "Recovered near Moscow, December 1941. Functional upon discovery." Visitors pass by. School children, tourists, veterans' grandchildren, unaware that they are looking at one of the most enduring designs in human history. The guide, an older historian named Dr. Ingrid Kohler, gestures toward it. "This pistol," she says softly, "outlived the war that made it. It outlived the empire that built it. And in a way, it outlived the men who carried it, on both sides." The Walther P38 is more than steel and mechanics. It is a paradox cast in metal, the embodiment of war's cruel genius. A weapon designed for efficiency, reliability, and mass production, the logical perfection of industrial warfare. Its simplicity made it moral proof. It did what it was built to do, nothing more, nothing less. That's the lesson that lingers. Perfection without conscience. Philosophically, the P38 occupies a strange space in history. The Luger was romantic, a weapon of pride, elegance, and status. The P38 was functional,
a tool that erased the line between man and machine. Where the Luger represented the old Germany, aristocratic and ceremonial, the P38 reflected the new Germany, mechanized, pragmatic, mercilessly efficient. It was designed not to inspire soldiers, but to equip them, not to impress the world, but to dominate it through sheer reliability. And that, perhaps, is why it survived. Across decades, soldiers and scholars have wrestled with the P38's legacy. Was it simply a well-made machine? Or a mirror held up to an age that worshipped machinery more than morality? When you hold one, cold, heavy, and perfectly balanced, you feel both the brilliance and the horror of what human beings can create when the only goal is function. The trigger is smooth. The slide cycles with precision. It feels alive. But that life was born in a factory designed for death. Ulm, Germany, 1986. Before his death, Fritz Walther, son of the company's founder, was asked in an interview whether he felt guilt for creating weapons that had served in one of history's darkest chapters. He paused for a long time, then replied, "A weapon is a reflection of its user. We built the best we could, but we could not choose whose hand it held." It's an answer both simple and haunting, an engineer's truth stripped of morality. And yet behind it lies an admission. Tools outlast intentions. The P38 proves it.
Today, more than 80 years after its creation, the P38 still fires. Collectors test them at ranges in America, Europe, even Japan. Each one still cycles, still delivers that sharp, mechanical click-clack that echoes across generations. Some are used in films. Some sit quietly in museums. A few are still issued to small police units in Eastern Europe, an artifact of another century that refuses to die. In every one of them lies the same paradox. A weapon built to destroy, yet preserved because it was built so well. From the mud of Stalingrad to the glass cases of Berlin, the Walther P38 remains untouched by time. It is both the symbol of a nation's fall and a monument to its engineering genius. It reminds us that war doesn't just kill people. It creates machines that outlive them. Machines that hold stories in their metal, memories in their mechanisms. The P38 tells one such story, of arrogance humbled, of design born from desperation, of survival beyond defeat. And perhaps if you listen closely enough, you can still hear it, that single, cold note of mechanical truth echoing through the ruins of the 20th century. Bang, click, bang. In the end, it wasn't the Luger that defined Germany's soldiers. It wasn't the tanks or the bombers either. It was this, a plain gray pistol that never stopped working, a piece of steel that outlasted an empire, a war, and an age. Because unlike men, flags, or ideologies, machines have no illusions. They only serve their purpose, faithfully, ruthlessly, perfectly. And that, perhaps, is why the Walther P38 will never truly die.